Hello, everyone. Welcome to season 2 of the Eye Sphere. Hope you're all having a good new year.
We're back.
I'm Joy, by the way, in case you're new.
And I'm I, and we are back better than ever, I think. We'll see how the volume actually works. But yeah, we've got a couple of topics to talk about this fine day. We watched Witcher Blood Origins over the holiday season. And we also have a rather interesting tale of the romantic author world coming up later on.
Drama that's happening right now. I say delicious, it's absolutely horrific, but like it's
baffling. The more you read, the more you just I generally felt my face just like drop as I read all that stuff. I did, because I was doing my research, because I hadn't heard a fucking thing about it, and then you're like, oh, guess what's just happened? Here's an article on it, and I was reading it, and I got like halfway down, and I was like, holy fuck. Amazing.
I think I messaged you with it was 1 o'clock your time in the morning, and I was like, wake up, bestie, new drama just dropped.
new romance author drama just dropped.
And every time there's been an update to the story, I've told Mothman, and his entire face he goes through an entire face journey of horror, because it's gotten worse. If anyone's seen my original post on Tumblr, it has gotten worse since then. So we're going to be getting into that. So grab your popcorn if you're down for the gossip. So yeah.
Witcher, Blood Origin. What did you think, Joy?
Controversial opinion. I liked it.
Okay, interesting.
I did not think it was as bad as everyone was saying it was.
Yep.
I didn't go in with particularly high expectations, but then I'm also a fan of The Witcher, so I knew not to have high expectations. So I'm just there for the silly and the drama, basically. There were a couple of things that I felt were off, but otherwise, a lot of the criticism I'm seeing just feels really unfair, especially when there's people comparing it to the books. It's, oh, this would never happen in the books. It's like, this is the exact sort of silly that happens in the books. I don't think we're reading the same things.
Yeah, so. I think I suppose before we dive into actually the story and what happens in the TV show, I think this kind of acted as a way for fans and people who probably consider themselves fans but aren't necessarily fans of the show, more fans of the game, to voice their disappointment in Henry Cavill exiting.
Yes.
So I think it kind of became like a proxy for voicing disappointment in that. And I also think picking Blood Origins apart, they wanted to try and compare that to the shit that Cavill's had to put up with on the writing side for the main series with Geralt. So I think it acted as a good proxy for a lot of people to voice their anger and
it just became a lightning rod for all the drama. And sorry, can I ask, is Holly's toy, is that loud? Can anyone hear that, or is my microphone actually blocking it?
I can't hear it at all, I think.
That's fine then, as long as you just can't hear. She's got a new crinkle toy, and it is the loudest thing known to man right now.
It's all good.
As long as no one else can hear it, that's fine. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it became a lightning rod for everybody's ire about everything else that's been wrong with the series.
Yeah. And to be fair,
I don't think it's been fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't personally enjoy the second series or the second season of The Witcher. I thought season 1 was quite good, and season 2 didn't really deliver on what I kind of expected the story to do. And then, of course, there was all the decisions made about Lambert and things like that. And I think for people who, for fans who watch it, I think it's the same kind of thought. We're already going on a tangent. It's the same kind of attitude I took into the Halo TV series. So, the Halo TV series, I really tried to park my, this is not going to follow the games. It's not going to follow the books. You're not going to get the story told the same way. And the problem that I kind of have with that is when you are making a TV series, your first port of call in terms of fans who are probably your easiest to to bank are people who are a fan of the games and the existing world. So I thought I thought season 2 wasn't really my cup of tea. I'll probably end up watching season 3 because I'll probably need to rewatch season 2 again to actually understand what happened. Because I think another issue that I've got, and we've spoken about this before, but Netflix releasing a full season to binge makes it all blur into one. I don't remember, I remember the highlights of season 2 of The Witcher, but I remember releasing it on day one for everyone to watch every single episode puts you in a position where you've got to sprint to watch all of it, otherwise you might be exposed to spoilers online. So there's people who take their time with it, there's people that sprint through it, and then there's a reason why The Witcher, the TV series, isn't actually talked about for a longer amount of time.
It's an interesting one as well for fandom aspects as well, because I've noticed that although the Witcher Netflix has an active fandom on places like Tumblr, because I know because I'm part of it, but it almost feels as if the binging of media has resulted in fandom having less community because there's less. I'm showing my age here, but I remember when things were coming out weekly, and you'd have a week to talk about things with your pals, and you'd be discussing what would maybe be happening next, and it would build up the tension, and you'd end up with a better sense of fandom community because you would have longer to digest things and also create for it. And I kind of miss that, not gonna lie.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, one thing that the current kind of binge watching allows, it almost steals away that element of community and waiting for the next one. Because I remember I did watch Game of Thrones. I feel like it's weird to admit that I'm a Game of Thrones watcher, but I watched Game of Thrones, and I remember watching that week on week. You got all of the conversation, and that's why
you did,
until it went down the toilet, it's why it had such a global interest. Whereas I finished. I think I finished Witcher season 2 in a day. I think I watched it all in one because I didn't want to risk spoilers. And then for my friends who maybe watched it at a slightly slower pace, I was on to the next thing already because no one was creating content. Maybe as a mix of I don't want to spoil it for anyone who maybe hasn't seen it, but also people hadn't actually had the time to watch it all and then make content for it. And it's also tougher when you're binging to really pick out a certain point from an episode and go, oh, that was a really good moment. I'm gonna, draw something relating to that, or I'm gonna draw this funny comic from a funny moment in that episode. It's not something that people do when they can binge because it's harder to go, this happened in that episode.
And it is really hard to pin things down. It's really hard to even just have discussions about it. Because you can't exactly, if you're binge watching it. I mean, I've sometimes been binge watching things along with friends when we've been doing watch parties and everything else. But even then, you're just reacting. You're not getting to theorize. You're not getting to go, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. I remember when the whole spoiler alert for season 2, they kill Lambert, who is a fan favorite across the books and the video games. It was such a silly thing to do. But I remember when that happened, both Mothman and I were sitting there going, it must be some creature that's taken his face. It's not really him. It can't really be him. And, it must be because he's not acting like Lambert. And everyone seems to be thinking he's acting weird. And then it just turns out he's the monster. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that's dumb.
That was,
My idea made better sense. But you can't even post it because then you're just giving spoilers.
Yeah, you're giving spoilers. You're potentially ruining the viewing experience for someone else. It's so you withdraw from the discussion, and then it's only a couple of months later when someone makes the off the cuff comment on Twitter or Tumblr or somewhere like that, and you kind of go, yeah, we really didn't get a chance to actually talk or process any of that because we were running for it. So sorry, that's already one tangent down. Get in, we're on a roll. I suppose we can probably start episode 1, and like, as kind of an overarching thing, I think one thing on my second watch through preparing for this, like the pacing issues were really, really obvious to me throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
Because for anyone who doesn't know, I think it was originally planned as a 6-episode miniseries, and it became a 4-episode miniseries. And watching it the second time, it becomes really, really quite obvious in regards to the pacing. Joy, I'm not sure whether you want to give us an overview of like some of the story.
So it starts with, of all people, Jaskier being thrown into what looks like a hell dimension. And for a lot of people, that pissed off a lot of people who were fans of Blood Origin, the actual story, because Jaskier's got nothing to do with it. I actually thought it was quite clever because for the whole series, Jaskier is the narrator in the books. He narrates everything, so it's quite fun to have the bard being the bard in this instance. But it starts with him in like an alternate kind of hell dimension. He's about to get murdered, and a clone of himself appears and stops it from happening. And it turns out it's like a magic elf creature from another realm that wants him to, as the Sandpiper, to tell the story of the convergence of the spheres and how the first Witcher was born, and to give the elves hope against this war that they're all currently in. And it kind of just goes from there. You get about maybe 5 minutes of build-up with Jaskier, and I think that was really to hook people because Joey Beatty is such a fan favourite. They were just relying on people going, "Oh, there's 2 Jaskiers in the first 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to watch that."
It's funny because that's actually something that I've got. That's something I've got in like my notes because like the first one is like that whole scene is like placement, and like I'd put placement in the universe is a bit strange. Like they get Jaskier in, and I said that like it kind of like the intro trips its way along almost like a fourth wall break, but it works because Jaskier's so good.
Yes.
It makes like I think that made it work for me. I think if you'd given it to anyone else, even if you'd given it to Geralt, I don't think it would have worked at all. I think it only worked because you had the fun bard character. I thought the elf woman was a little bit strange, the narrator that narrates over the rest of the episode. Like she fills in the gaps whenever there's like traveling or like a new scene or anything like that. And one thing that I did kind of wonder is why they didn't also have Jaskier almost having like a Q&A between...
That's something that I was thinking too, because even if they did that kind of fourth wall breaking kind of thing, it would have made up for the bad pacing because it's basically him frantically scribbling everything down. So that could have been your excuse for why everything's... why there's, inconsistencies and why things are, sped up and focused on more things, and then why there's this lingering thing. And it's, the pacing, I think, if they were forced to cut it that way, they could have made it part of that's how it's supposed to be by having him going, and then what happens next? Or being like someone going, hold up, that doesn't make sense, and then going, just go with it. Like that's
just something to fill in the space a little bit, because I thought it was a bit, I don't know, you just like it was just the narrator, the elf woman, just filling in the rest of it, and you kind of go, where is Jaskier? And he kind of appears at the end, and you go, So we then get introduced to Ayla, the Lark is the title that she has. And she is a former warrior of the Raven clan, and she is on an island that is pronounced very interestingly by some of the cast members, given how it's spelled, but it's Innisdu, and I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Innisduv, because they're taking the Gaelic pronunciation, but they're not.
A lot of butchery, but that's kind of. I mean, Elder Speak. Elder Speak is literally there's a scene in season 1 where Yennefer is showing some girls some spells and speaking in the Elder tongue, and it's literally botched Welsh, and it's just talking gibberish, and all the Welsh people watching it were going, "Why is she talking rubbish?" They like to take Celtic languages and just pull them apart to make it into the Elder speech. I'm like, you could just make something up. You could do what the Klingons did, or Lord of the Rings. You can hire a linguistic specialist to make a language for you that isn't butchering another language that does exist.
Yeah,
but, it's Netflix.
Yeah, and there's another one that we'll come on to in that. But I found it's interesting because I watched, I remember after finishing, it came up on my recommendeds on YouTube, but I watched like one of the incel movie TV critic
I remember
people
that,
on YouTube. So it was unfortunately he's a Scottish guy as well. He's called the Critical Drinker, and he's like he's like absolutely playing to like the alt-right crowd. It's all very like cringe. And one of the criticisms that I've seen in like the kind of, there's a particular group of people on Twitter who've been railing against Blood Origins for all of the wrong reasons. They've not had any conversation like we've had about like the amount of episodes or anything. They just don't like that the medieval fantasy world has black people. That's pretty much it. But there was like I've seen criticisms of like the introduction to the Lark where she's in the bar, she's in the tavern, and there's a group of guys in the tavern and they're pricks and they're hassling the wee girl, and we get to an introduction to the Lark being quite cool. She throws the daggers and stabs them in the knee, and like they're railing against that as an introduction. And I would like, I'm kind of annoyed at it because it is such a well-worn fantasy. Like everything happens in the tavern. You get introduced to everyone in the tavern. D&D sessions always have something happen in a tavern. And
also, bards are a combat class. They can't. Bards can't. I have a T-shirt that says that bards can be a combat class. People saying, "Well, she's a bard. She's supposed to be." No, bards are a combat class. Get over it.
It's just I found. I think Geralt also has a tavern scene in episode 1 in season 1, and it's like, okay, so it can happen to Geralt, it can't happen to someone else, as if people being dicks in bars isn't like humanity for the whole of history.
It can happen to the white male protagonist. It can't happen to anyone not part of that demographic, basically.
It just, I felt it was like really out of place because it is such a well-worn, like it's a well-worn trope that fits so naturally. It's like, how do you quickly introduce a character, their attitudes? Someone needs help in a tavern that the character's in, and the quest begins. That kind of thing. It seems like
it's classic storytelling. It's a way of showing social interaction. It's also a way of having world building. It's showing class in the world as well, like the different classes of people, and like it was really well done. I love the fact that it started with the Lark showing up, and the first thing she does is she gives a coin to a beggar, who says, "Oh, there's not been music here for a long time." What does that tell you? It tells you people are poor. It tells you no one really bothers with this area. They're lacking in cultural joys because they don't have music. And then you have this fantastic character who comes in, who's very good at music. Everyone's enthralled. You have soldiers that are being dicks. That shows you these people are being oppressed.
Yeah.
It's such a good way of just building the scene in such few minutes. And people criticizing, oh, it's cliche and trope. Okay, then none of your fantasy stuff ever again can have it.
Yeah. Everything you've just described is really just virtue signaling at the end of the day.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
But so we get introduced in that regard, and then we get introduced to the other main character, Fionn Stoneheart, which is definitely a name. And he is part of Dog Clan?
Dog Clan, yeah.
And the Dog Clan are protectors of one of the, I think it's
the Elvish royal families, yeah.
Is it Sintria? Yeah. I think so.
Zintria, yeah.
So, at the moment, we've got 3, to lay out the world a little bit, we've got 3 elven kingdoms that are all at war, and they constantly fight, and it's been going on for 1,000 years, and the new king of Sintria wants to kind of like start to orchestrate peace, and has gone out into the lower city to mingle with the common people. Bit like King Charles now. Oh God, I keep on saying Prince. But a bit like King Charles, but goes out to see the commoners, and people try and kill him. And he's also taken his sister with him, the king's sister, Merwin. And, Fionn Stoneheart saves Merwin, and then she stabs an assassin as well. And that's the kind of introduction to him. So he's a defender there. The Dog Clan work with that royal family to protect them. And he ends up getting exiled because he ends up shagging Merwin, who he's supposed to be protecting.
They've had a long-standing love affair going on, and he finally gets caught, basically. Yeah. He should be executed, but his father exiles him.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's quite, like... Yeah, so the king is also wanting to build this peace, so what he plans to do is marry off his sister. And this annoys his sister, and his sister doesn't want to be married off.
She thinks she's got a higher purpose.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's an interesting character, but for what happened to her, she was severely underdeveloped for what needed to happen.
Excruciatingly underdeveloped. I've actually got that written. So the thing that happens to really kick it all into gear, the whole story, is that the three monarchs of each kingdom come together in this, like, peace conference, basically. And the sister Merwin excuses herself and goes to leave. She pretends that she's unwell, and then she kills Fionn Stoneheart's sister and, like, locks the door and unleashes a demon monster creature from another world, and it basically
through the monolith.
Yeah, and it basically wipes out all of the monarchs. And then she brings the three regions under one empire that she's the empress of. And, like, going back to how underdeveloped she is, like, this is all happening in episode 1. There is no build up to this. And to be honest, one thing that I found frustrating is even the conversation she has with the king, she's not that frustrated. Like, she does think she has a...
stressed. She seems distressed more than frustrated.
But there's a bit where... like, she thinks that she should be in, like, an advisory position to the king. And she's like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. And he's like, no, you've got your purpose. You're going to help secure peace. And she there's a little bit of pushback, but she also kind of goes, I understand. Like, there's a bit of it. And I've got here, it's like, I really don't mind that level of subtlety, but I also don't think that she was... like, it would be different if there was that bit of, like, agreement with her brother, and then you could see her get really angry when she's alone, but you never see her angry enough to kind of, like, kill her whole family and then kill her protectors.
No build up at all. And it was genuinely, like, I thought that you were going to find out she'd been possessed. I thought you were going to find out that the mage had possessed her and that's why she did it. But no, there was just zero build up towards her doing what she did. There was no hint towards it, and that is something you have to foreshadow. You have to foreshadow a character who's about to kill their entire family if you want it to be believable. As someone pointed out in the chat, I think it was who was it? Can't see you now. Someone said they thought she was going to be pregnant because she was having sex with the other guy, and she seems like a very flighty academic. That would have been more believable to me than what actually happened. But the whole time it was happening, I'm like, oh my god, that Baylor guy, he must have taken control of her. No.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, I think
she's gone off and had an entire coup against her brother, and we have no idea it happened.
It was funny because like rewatching it today, one of the things that I clocked was that it's really weird how she kills the sister of Fionn.
Yeah.
Because you're shown at the start of the episode when the assassins attack in the street. Like, that is her first kill. She's standing there quivering, holding this, like, bloodied knife. It's so obvious she doesn't want to be doing it again, like, anytime soon. She's in shock.
There's a whole scene where sitting in her room staring at her bloody hands, and she's obviously terrified.
Yeah, and it just seems to go from that to like slitting the throat of like one of her protectors that she's like known,
and her whole family.
Yeah, and killing her whole family. It just seemed a bit like, all right. And yeah, I think a kind of higher power possessing her, even if it wasn't Baelor, if it was like another evil kind of spirit thing, that would have been better.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have had it be the chaos entity that's in the other realm that Baelor's trying to get all of his powers from. It would have made more sense to me if the chaos entity was taking control of her. Yeah. Because it wants to be in that world. Yeah. That would have made so much more sense. When I watched it again yesterday, I was sitting there taking notes, and I'm going, there were so many ways you could have made this better. There were so many ways you could have tied everything together, and that the reason that chaos comes into the world is not because of how it happened, but there were just better ways of doing it. And it annoys me that people with Netflix's budget can't think of these things. Yeah. Like, what are you being paid for at this point?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the issues. Right, so that kind of like lays out the story. Naturally, Fionn and Ayla are gonna try and put a stop to this, right? And that's the whole thing. We're gonna take a brief moment for talking about the story because we're gonna start talking about cock. Joy. There is an awful lot of cock as a word in the whole show, and it's always used in a really strange way. I'm not sure if it's like a medieval thing.
There's a lot of things that people think that we didn't use a lot of swears or a lot of bodily anatomy, but I mean, I have a whole dictionary that gives you every word for sex and or sexual acts going back to the 11th century, and there's a ton of them, and they were used quite commonly.
And that's absolutely fine, right? Like, it's weird because I don't really hear the word cock used as like a negative, right? I know that sounds like I'm bamming myself up a little bit, but like. Normally, like, so Ayla, when she meets Fionn Stoneheart, they meet in this kind of like prison thing, and she keeps on saying things like, oh, keep your dog clan cock to yourself, or like, I'll feed your cock to the dogs. And it just seems very like, I was just thinking they could have used another word, right? They could have used prick, they could have used dick, they could have used whatever, but it just seemed like there was this. Like, why cock? It just doesn't seem like it's not like an offensive word. Not to me, anyway.
Cock is the acceptable word for a lot of things in romance. It's the acceptable thing in a lot of fantasy. It's not the word that's least likely to get censored. As a pair, dick is considered to be more offensive than cock, for example.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Is considered to be more offensive. So they're getting away with a kiddie swear, basically, is what they're doing.
Right, okay. It's like I'm just thinking about the way you would write a romance scene, and you mention someone's cock, right? Mm-hmm. It tends to be in a romance scene when you're trying to like get things a little bit steamy, but like, for a woman to be like, I'll feed your cock to the dogs, it's like, it could just be like, your prick's gonna get cut off. I'd expect it to be a little bit more cutting.
It's also regionalism. It's also regionalism because it's mostly aiming for an American audience, and cock is more likely than prick, basically. But to answer Thunderwolf's question, why is dick more offensive? I don't know. That's just what censors say for certain things. There's a lot more, but it also depends on what region you're in. I mean, I will say the word cunt quite happily. Cunt can be used affectionately in Scotland as well. But if you say it to an American, a lot of people flinch.
Yeah.
And it's a weird one. I use it for my romance, and I get people complaining about things. Oh, you can't use that word. And I'm like, I can, though, because it's not offensive. Yeah. I mean, literally, I think Mothman might be typing it, I can hear him. I think my dad called him a daft cunt affectionately the first time they met.
Yes. Welcome to the family.
Basically. But it was that kind of... it's a weird cultural thing, and American TV and American writing tends to be a lot more kind of don't use certain words, and I think they're trying to avoid being Game of Thrones, and because Game of Thrones used cunt a lot in a very offensive way.
Yeah.
And that was like their main swear word, and it was like misogynistic. And it was very obvious it was misogynistic. And I'm going, most of those people have a British accent. They would not be using the word that way.
Yeah. That was always like they're almost their cheap shock value. Like
it was. And they're using, because The Witcher's not as serious as Game of Thrones, I think they're using cock also as almost like reverse sexism, if that makes any sense. I think they're trying to get away from using, they don't say bitch a lot, which is weird for a fantasy. They don't say, they don't use a lot of female negative descriptive words in this show. And it's almost as if they've gone, well, if we use male anatomy more derogatorily, it's equality. And that's what I think they're doing. And I don't think it works, but I do think that is what they're doing.
I suppose just in my mind, like I would always associate the descriptor, like the use of cock would suit a more like steamy scene. This is going to go in the description of the YouTube video. Like, I for Scotland goes on a tangent about cocks for fucking 10 minutes. But it's like I was just expecting her to be like, I'll cut your little prick off. That kind of like
that almost
harsher and more stabby. Whereas like Ayla's standing there being like, "Oh, your dog clan cock." It's like it sounds like you're complimenting the guy.
It sounds like a bit of a come on. For that, it's like people who
you used come on deliberately there.
People who flirt with violence. That is what it almost kind of feels like.
Yeah.
And maybe they were trying to set that up. I don't know. It is a weird one that I have noticed with Witcher, that they are very fond of the word cock.
Yeah.
How many times have we said it now? That would be interesting if we had someone doing the transcripts for us, because they could tell us. But I do think they're trying to soften it, but I think they're also trying to be more empowered by using male anatomy as like a threat. And I'm like, okay. That's a choice. That is your choice.
And to be honest, I think this is a good time to maybe open up the broader use of swearing throughout this, because I think it kind of borders on childish.
Yes.
And it was the first time I've ever watched a fantasy series where I went, this is too far. This is me saying it as well. Mm-hmm. It's like the swearing's a bit too far. I mean, like I could deal with Jaskier's fuckity fuck, like right at the start when he's like panicking. I could kind of get it.
And that's also very on brand for Jaskier. Jaskier's a man in his 40s, looks 30, thinks he's 20, and acts like he's 10. That is a quote from the series. That is a quote from the book series.
Yeah.
He is someone who is quite funny, that he has this grand, wonderful vocabulary, and he resorts to fuckity fuck 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 a lot of the time. That is his humour. That is part of what makes him funny. And when it happened a lot of the other times, it was just like...
There's a really bad one at the start of episode 2 where I was just like, are they doing the same thing again? Because like one of the... we're going to come on to this, but one of the party members... goes to, like, knocks on a door, and a Scottish elf answers. And after a bit of conversation, he goes, "Fuck the fucking fuck off!" And I was just sitting there and I was like, what fucking Glasgow School of Art hell has this fucking, like, ad-libbing swear words for, like, it felt like when I say a liberal use of swear words, I mean, like, liberal as in a fucking political stance. It just felt like, you know how after Donald Trump visited Scotland and Scottish Twitter TM reacted, and you ended up with a lot of like really, like you had some funny ones, and then everyone else wanted to emulate it, so you ended up with like a bunch of really liberal people like using compound swear words. So you got things like fuck what's it, and like just shit like that, like people just coming out with like that. I kind of hate it. And I think that's one of the things when the dialogue between the party and then the dialogue from side characters, where there was just this constant wave of swearing, and I know that, you know, you could get across how harsh the world is. Everyone's you know, got the vocabulary of a sailor, but like, I don't know, it kind of pulls me out of it. I don't mind in-world swears as much, but like, because I feel like you can be quite, you know, like full on. If you like, you know, create an in-world swear, you can like say it as much as you like, really. But it's weird hearing, you know, normal swears.
It's very thick of it. It was very thick of it.
It was,
with
yes.
Peter Capaldi. And the Peter Capaldi character, although he's fantastic in the thick of it, was a very angry Scottish stereotype who swore every word could be a swear word with him. Yeah. And that was part of what made him funny, though, because he was this very stereotypical Scottish character in Westminster. And I would honestly believe that, you know, I would be swearing every second word as well if I was working in Westminster. But it was a very harsh, negative stereotype.
But there was also an underlying humour to swearing, like the sentences that he would say while swearing was funny. It wasn't the swearing itself. It was like the emphasis that it gave. I mean, like, one of the funniest lines from the thick of it is like, you were like a sweaty octopus trying to unhook a bra, and that doesn't use any swear. But like, you know, but then he calls him a fucking tit after it, and it's. Like that,
it's
used
to punctuate the point rather than being the point.
Yeah.
One of my favourite ones is, I'll throw a hand grenade into their dreams, and then he punctuates. Then he goes, it's things like that. The creative use of language works, and then the swearing is just an emphasis for, I can be extremely witty and clever, but I'm still going to call you a fucking dick. Like that was, that is a very Glaswegian thing. Again, bringing up Mothman, I think the first time he was in Scotland with me, he just could not believe the level of
patter, amazing patter,
creative patter that happens. Because somebody will come away with something that could sound like it's from Shakespeare, and then end it with, you daft cunt. And it's just like, it completely just blows you out the water, because you have this fantastic witticism, and then it's just got the most derogatory language at the end of it, and you're going, you've made a choice, and that choice is to put the person down even further. Whereas in The Witcher, that doesn't happen. It's just swearing because you've a wee kid that's figured out all the bad words.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And so I was wondering, because of the Scottish elf fuck the fucking fuck off, it made me acutely aware of all of the Scottish accents in the show. And to be fair to them, there is Scottish actors using something in the show. And I've got a theory about this. I've actually got a grand theory, Joy. And it comes down entirely to direction. And it also comes down to why it's dangerous to have trendy accents being used in television and movies. I feel like the Scottish accent is very much in trend at the moment. I've seen it in Andor, I've seen it in Rings of Power, and I've seen it in Witcher Blood Origins, and I dare say there's a couple of other things. But the actress playing Merwin was definitely Scottish.
Mirren Mac. Can you get more Scottish name than Mirren Mac?
One of the things I didn't like that she, like, again, I'm not criticising the actress here. I think we've got to make that clear. I think there's an issue with the direction of Scottish actors and people who want Scottish accents in their show. So I think what the Scottish actress was being asked to do, I think what Mirren Mac was being asked to do, was to read fully English lines in a Scottish accent. And I think she was asked to emphasise her Scottish accent on various words. But the problem was she wasn't being directed to use Scots Standard English. So she was being asked to use her Scottish accent, but in an almost received pronunciation way of talking. And that fucks things up, because it was really, really noticeable. See, when she was having the conversation with the king in the first episode, I noticed that there was a lot of emphasis put on certain words in her sentence, but the emphasis was put before a word that she wouldn't naturally say in English.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know how if you get into a point when you're talking in a Scottish accent and you're using Scots words to like throughout your speech, you end up kind of slipping into, you wouldn't say anything, you'd say anything, you'd actually get into like using more of that. I think that there's some words in English that they're being directed to put a lot of emphasis on, and then the word after it, they're also like they can't have them go into speaking Scots, so they have to have them speak English, and it ruins the flow completely.
It goes against the natural speech pattern that we have. It goes against the way that we would emphasize certain words, and it's something that I've encountered. I did elocution lessons as a child, and the only way for proper, I suppose it's now King's English, was to sound was to lessen your accent, because if you tried to keep your accent as thick as it normally would be, it just doesn't work. The emphasis falls on the wrong words. I think of it as the Outlander effect, because none of the Scottish cast in Outlander, if you hear them speaking, they don't have that accent in real life.
Yeah,
they use much more broader. It's not as emphasized. And I think part of what throws me about a lot of stuff that's, Outlander and a couple of other things, is that it's very overemphasized to be, it's Scottish, it's noticeable, and it's like, it doesn't need to be that over dramatic. You can just let people talk.
Yeah.
And they will notice.
And the thing is, me and Jessica were talking about this, because we're talking about like how it's, is it quite nice to hear a lot more Scottish accents? In a way, yes, it is. But I think there's going to be a lot of people who maybe don't get they're going to have a weird, they're going to have a weird idea of what people from Scotland talk like. And it is that Outlander effect that you're talking about, where, like, because all of these things are very scripted as well, and like when you're hearing Scottish accents in like Andor, for example, there's no way in hell that Scots words are going to be used in the way that the actor probably would use Scots words regularly if they were speaking. Like, I mean, not all of us are like 100% fluent in Scots anyway, but like all of us speak Scots Standard English. Like, all of us have that kind of blend.
I mean, a lot of people don't even realise they're speaking Scots. They've been told they're speaking slang.
Yeah.
They've been told they're not speaking proper. They're actually just speaking their own native language that they've been told is not a language. So for a lot of people, they don't understand that, like you gave the example of anything, or, anything. It's that kind of, can I even say anything?
Anything.
I have to, I change the shape of my mouth to say it. And
I wouldn't want anything, and I wouldn't want anything. Is the same thing. But one has a lot better rhythm and is way more natural for me to say.
Mm-hmm. Whereas if I'm doing my, I have my American telephone voice, I have my British telephone voice. My emphasis falls on different words because that is the way the dialect is used regionally.
Yeah.
There's certain things, I'm in St. Paul, there's certain things that you say in a certain way in St. Paul to indicate, mood, tone, region, all these things. And people know I'm foreign. They know there's something off, but they can't quite place it. They think I'm from a different part of Minnesota. And then they hear me at my actual Scots accent and they go, oh, it's a whole other dialect that I've learned to mimic, because that's how you blend, that's how you communicate with them. Because the Scottish tone does not translate well to a lot of American tones. It doesn't even translate to a lot of English ones as well, which I think is why Scotland gets they're so aggressive. We're not really, we just talk fast.
Yeah. It's interesting because
it's the rhythm of the language.
Yeah, Banner Cialach in chat saying, speaking as an Irish person, Fionl's actor's accent also sounds weirdly overdone, and he's Irish. I think that there's probably something there. I have to say, you're probably with Scots Standard English, I've heard it being described as almost like a kind of Creole.
It's very American Southern. I've noticed that can understand people from the south easier than I can from the northern parts of America, and it's because a lot of the south was founded. The people that had the plantations were Scottish.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
I do apologise, but that level of the rhythm of the language is still there. That southern drawl works with the Scottish accent. Because it's a funny thing for me, because I've been saying y'all my whole life, or y'all would have, and people go, well, that's American. It's not. It's, it's not a Southern American thing. It comes from Scotland originally, because it's y'all.
I was going to say, use is right there.
Use as well. Yeah. I prefer use, but y'all's a East Coast thing, whereas use is a bit more Central and West Coast. So it's funny how the language evolves, but I can pick up the rhythm easier of someone down south than I can up here. And it's because it goes back to my original native tongue, and the language is still there. But yeah, use is also northeastern US. But it is used completely differently from how we would use it. So it's a funny one. It's really funny, the words that survive and exist, and people go, well, that's regional to here. Well, it stems from the common language of the people that settled the region.
Yeah.
So it is, but it's kind of interesting to see how in fantasy it becomes, the emphasis is on not maintaining the natural, you can very easily have no natural rhythm to it. It's, you must sound Scottish. Well, the actress is Scottish, just like her talk.
I know. The other thing, and I don't know if this is a direction or if it's just the way she speaks, but she's really raspy. She does that like low, like I don't know what. Like
it's called frying. It's when you fry your voice. It's when a lot of women are told to fry their voice, either to sound
older or
it's a kind of to sound non-threatening almost. It's also to sound you're told to sound sexier with it. A lot of women fry because it makes you sound non-threatening, and it can make you sound as if you're putting a question on things. And that was the thing that got me, because even when the actress was being threatening, she sounded like it was a question because she was frying her voice. It's an interesting one.
I've encountered a couple of people in my life that have done that, and I've always thought, what's going on?
It's not behaviour, and it's normally in with people or to make yourself seem appealing, or some of it's sex appeal.
It doesn't work.
It depends on your culture, though, because I know in California, for example, it's at one point there was actually a movie made about it, and it was voice actresses were being told, you need to fry your voice, and the thing is, it damages your voice. It strains your vocal cords and everything else.
Well, that was one of the things I thought was really quite noticeable, is that she easily had the least presence on screen.
A very weak voice. Very weak, very reedy, almost like thin. And the thing is, when she was allowed to speak at a normal volume, she was fine. But when she was doing whatever it was, I don't know if it was supposed to be, you're in power, so make it sound deadly, and they told her to fry her voice for whatever reason. She just came off as sounding like she needed a throat lozenge, unfortunately.
I mean, I think, kind of maybe moving on from, the whole accent side of things, I think back to almost Merwin was really underdeveloped. I don't think that was her fault. I genuinely think that came down to the pacing of the show, because what I'm guessing happened was, originally it was going to be 6 episodes of maybe 45 minutes, and then they made 4 episodes that were an hour, and so as we mentioned, so the 2 main characters, Fionn and Ayla, are still on this island, and they need to get back to the story. So, assassins are sent after them.
Reasons
for reasons, but it's how quick this happens, and I think The Witcher's always The Witcher season 1 was clever in how it approached time, but I don't think it was particularly accessible to people who were new to the world. Like I thought it was quite clever, but it was definitely, I think quite a lot of people did struggle with it, and I think the rate at which things happen in episode 1 alone is nuts. Like, you start the episode with a peace treaty being called, everyone then dies, then you've got Fionn and Ayla kind of teaming up, they get back to the mainland, and by that time the Empress has taken over, the Empress's banners absolutely everywhere for this new Golden Empire. Like, there's all of this is in episode 1, and it really hurts. Like, one thing at the end, so you're told at the start that it's 7 people. You will meet 7 main characters who will all form part of, like, the party that the story's about. And by the end of episode 1, you've got 3 of them, which is actually okay. One of the things I really don't like, though, is that by the end of episode 1, the third character, who's called Skian, which is skiing with a C, which is obviously just skiing from Gaelic with the G. And she's like the old mentor. She was part of Ghost Clan, so you've got Raven, Dog, and Ghost. But she's already given them really deep insights. Like, she's like, Fionn, you're too emotional, and Ayla, you don't know how to fight in a team. And she's like, I feel like this is very episode 2 or episode 3 kind of like character development.
Pacing, you can tell when it got cut from 6 to 4 that the pacing went to shit, and they had to fit as much as they could into the little time they had, because that was definitely she's literally seen them for 5 minutes and she's giving them a complete rundown of all their faults, and it's like, cool, and you can have, if you take the idea that it's Jaskier being narrated this time from a dead entity, you can feel there's some leeway for that, but again, you have to lean into that. You have to lean into him going, well, wait a minute, how did they get there? Or you have to lean into like the idea of him asking questions and not just this breakneck pace at which everything's going at. It was literally the equivalent of having the Red Wedding and the execution of what's his face, Sean Bean from Game of Thrones all at once. That's what it was in the first episode, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But there was nothing. There was no padding. There was nothing to hold it up. It was just too fast. It was too quick.
There was one scene in particular that I thought was absolutely, definitely going to be, it was like an episode 2 scene. It's when Ayla and Fionn first arrive. They get their ship, and then they first arrive back into, I think it's Gaelith, they call the town. And they go into a tavern, and they sit at the tavern, and the locals are discussing the new empire that's taken control, and the guards walk in and they, harass people, and they're learning about the new world with what they've just kind of come back. And I was like, as I was watching it, I was like, this is an episode 2 scene that has been stuck on in the last 15 minutes of episode 1, and it just, you never... Because there was no natural episode break, there was no way to mentally go, some time has passed, right? Because I think it's appreciated that whenever you've got a kind of episodic adventure, that unless it's a cliffhanger that ends and then starts at that same scene, there has been some time passed. Me and Jessica are watching Criminal Minds at the moment, and we know that we don't need to watch them get back to the office and then pick up the next case. We can see, a week's passed or something.
There's some things you can take for granted that you don't need. You don't need to have every minute detail where Fionn crossed the steps and it took him 7 days. You don't need all that stuff. But the pacing is off. It's literally, there's so many things. It's Ayla's sister went to go get her to take her to the peace treaty, but everyone's already dead. So what happened there? You know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And there's things like it just the pacing's off, and there's certain narrative details that a good copy editor would have caught.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time Netflix is notorious for for The Witcher at least, they're not good at catching continuity errors, and then they kind of like brush it off as, well, you're just not smart enough to understand what we're doing, and it's like, no, you just don't know how to tell a story in the correct way.
Yeah.
It's not like with the season 1 of The Witcher where everything was jumping all over the place and it was you were telling different timelines all at once. This was literally just a fuck up.
Yeah, no, I definitely got that from it. And I think, like, to be fair, and again, I think all of the problems with The Witcher Blood Origin are production orientated.
Yes.
Because I think cutting it from 6 episodes to 4 put pressure on the writers, who had to then rewrite to try and fit things in, and there was probably scenes already shot, and they were like, fuck, how do we use these? And I reckon it then became almost like a patchwork quilt of like, how do we glue all this shit together? I think that is by far the biggest problem with it. I really enjoy the cast. I actually think the cast were all great.
Yeah.
I think if the Empress had a bit more time to breathe and maybe come up with, like, I don't know, just a little bit more kind of motivation for what she was doing, because I didn't get the feeling that she was. I thought she was interested in history. I didn't feel like she was overly passionate about conquering new worlds.
She didn't come off as a colonizer until the exact moment it was okay, well, now you're a colonizer.
Yeah, and she had to state that she was a colonizer, and she was like, well, conquest for conquest's sake's not worth it. Like, you need to colonize them.
Like an academic who was wanting to do more with her life. And then all of a sudden, she's literally just, we're going to invade other worlds and take their resources. It was like, oh, okay, where did that come
from? Whoa. So, another thing that I really liked Ayla's fight style. I thought that, like, obviously Fionn is your big, almost barbarian-y, like, axe boy. But I actually thought that the choreography for the fight when they get attacked by the assassins is really good, because I think it shows, like, Ayla, like, playing to her strengths. She's obviously way more, like, she's almost acrobatic in how she, like, she's stabbing folk in the leg and then rolling through that stab and pulling the knife out and stuff, and I thought that was really cool. I liked that they gave the Black Rose song like an in-universe kind of meaning. I liked it. It was diegetic. I used that fucking correctly. You can't take that away from me. It was diegetic. Not this time. But I did enjoy, like, that part of it. And I know that there was cheesy bits of, like, other people singing it because they enjoyed the song in universe. When they, like, in episode 1 as well, they pass, like, a group of people who are moving somewhere, or migrating somewhere, or fleeing somewhere. So I thought that was cool. I also thought, like, the costume department went to town on the Empress's clothes.
They did. And I mean, in general, the costumes were good. It was a lot better than Rings of Power was, I thought, when it came to costumes.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me when you know the level of detail they put into season 1 and season 2 costumes. Season 1, I think they put more detail in, to be honest. But I was pleasantly surprised with the level of detail and, that the quality of the costume as well. Like, it obviously wasn't just like, this is just someone's put, like, plastic moulding on it and put...
spray painted it, yeah.
Spray painted in bronze, which unfortunately...
That was...
Where you're just like, that looks like printed polyester, and it was.
Well, that was one of the things. See The Witcher, like The Witcher season 1 Nilfgaard armor. That's me, like, the one that had all the squiggles on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was included in the Witcher 3 next gen update. So you can now have the Nilfgaards wear, like, shitty looking armor. It seems pretty strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that, like, only other thing, and again, this is really largely down to pacing. All of the other party members were completely forgettable for me. outside of maybe the Northern English one with the hammer.
Off.
Yeah.
Who is played by the fantastic Francesca Mills, yes. I thought her arc was really good.
But suffers because of the pacing issue, I thought.
It does.
Like, yeah.
It does.
And then there was a point where she gets introduced to the group, and then it's kind of like the writers went, and everyone else.
Yeah, it was basically like,
very quickly.
We got the slower build up with the first 3-4 characters, and then it was shit. We've got 3 more people to fit in. Let's all just have them meet in the forest.
Yeah,
by chance. Let's just have them meet in this magical forest.
Yeah, and
this is like, yeah.
You don't get much more on that. And then, of course, you've got like the original Trial of the Grassies. That's kind of interesting, but just like whatever. One thing that I didn't think they did particularly well in the last episode was the real feeling of revolution.
No.
And I think 6 episodes would have built to that a lot more, because I feel like the song The Black Rose and everything like that is about the common people kind of rising up, and it just did not have time to like permeate through all of the episodes. You have to start
agitating before you need the riot. Like, that's the thing. Like, that was what Andor did really well, is that people have been agitating for the full amount of time. Yeah. Whereas this is just, you're a bard, you can do your magic, and it's like, that's not how that works. Even if you're a magic bard, you need to start sowing the seeds of rebellion way from the start. Not just, I'm going to show up at the city and cause a riot. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and like they did try and talk about the famine. Like, one thing I would say is that episode 3 becomes a blur for me. I think that was filler to get us to the end. You meet the rest of them, but I think like you do end up with like just a kind of just a mess. But I think if they were able to get all the way to that, it's almost like you'd want Centrea to be a tinderbox and our party of 7 lights the match kind of thing.
Sindri is a bit of a damp rag at that point.
Yeah, well, it's like people are starving and like they're
starving and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of accepting it because they think, oh, there's grain stores there, and it's like, yes, you should be trying to get them. And it takes the magical 7 to show up and liberate them and be like, oh, look, there's actually no food. This you need to rebel now, and it's like that you needed to pace it better. You needed to have the agitation from the start instead of it being.
I also kind of think you needed to have the oppression. Like, I think we're told about the oppression quite a lot, but we're not shown much of it. I think we're just supposed to kind of accept what the world's.
You see some instances where Merwin goes into the city to see things for herself, which I think is interesting that she gives a shit, considering she's shown to be so involved with wanting to take over the other worlds at this point. Yeah. But she's so. I think it's a guard or somebody walks into her and she's shocked by how cruel he is just to walk into her. And it's
is that not
to stab you?
Is that not the general though that walks into her?
But she was looking around as if to say, oh my goodness, I've never seen poverty before. You were literally the opening scene, you were in the streets and people were rioting trying to kill you. How do you not know that this is happening?
She's the graceful empress. Let them eat cake, etc. But yeah, I think like I'm kind of gutted that it's not going to be seen as successful as it should have been. I think they could have made a really good 6-part miniseries out of it.
I think they could have as well.
Netflix obviously starved out of resources.
I think Netflix. I think they're hemorrhaging money, which is or they're claiming to, at least, that they're hemorrhaging money because they've axed so many good things or they've cut down. So you just have to look at how they gutted their animation department.
Yeah.
But they're pulling back resources from things that could be huge money makers for them.
I'm just thinking with the amount of seasons that they leave to die, there's so many shows that after one season have just went, nah, that's it. I'm surprised that they're not really like bolstering the ones that already have quite a solid following. I mean, like,
yeah.
Wednesday's obviously been pretty big for them. Like The Witcher should have been big for them, and they don't seem to have supported it to the same.
The Witcher would have had the support of the fandom no matter what. There would always be some people that didn't like it because it didn't match either the books or the games.
Yeah.
But it's got a huge fan following. But the writers treat a lot of the fans as if they're stupid, which is costing them a lot of respect. And people are not watching because they're going, no, if I'm going to get treated like I'm stupid, I don't want to watch it. They literally, at one point, they were saying, oh, it's not our fault if you can't understand what we're doing. It is your fault. As the storyteller, you have to be explicit. If your reader can't follow along with it, you have a problem. It's not that you're too smart for them. It's that you're not smart enough to explain yourself.
Yeah.
And that is 101 writing. I mean, the basic reading comprehension in the US is about grade 5 or 6, which is about maybe 14, 15 years old is about the literacy rate in America. The UK is actually the same.
Yeah.
So if you are not explaining yourself at that level, if you're not able to have people follow along, it's your fault because you don't understand how to actually write for the audiences that are there. And saying, well, we're just writing, but we're doing something so clever. If it's so clever, people can't understand it. It's not clever.
Yeah.
It's just complicated. And that's different. But yeah, Waffle Fraud, Wednesday is getting a season 2. It was hugely popular, thankfully. But there's just the thing about. I read an interesting thing about unionization when the writer's strike happened in like 2008, 2009, and it was residuals don't get paid to actors or film crew until a certain amount of time. And it seems to be that things are getting axed before they can get, I think it's about 3 months or whatever. So a lot of Netflix's stuff at the minute has been up for, it's been 3 months and then it doesn't perform as well as they should and then they cancel it. So they don't have to pay residuals. That's why a lot of Disney things and a lot of classic shows are getting put into vaults because it means they no longer have to pay residuals towards the film crew and the actors, which is shitty.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing it. They're avoiding paying residuals. It's not that they're just taking them off the market. They're avoiding paying people for contracts that have gone back for decades. Which is why it's you should be when it's for certain things. If you can buy it, if you can, great. If you can't, if it's a streaming only thing, I don't have any problem with people having other access to it for certain things. When it comes to these sort of corporations who are purposely doing this to avoid paying people, that's bad. That's shit. But the HBO and Warner Brothers is the current worst offender because they are doing that en masse. They are putting so many things in the vault and you can't access them anymore. Film show creators are losing access to things that they've made because they don't have personal access to them.
Yeah.
That's awful. Imagine you spend 10 years of your life working on something and it just gets deleted because the film industry doesn't want to pay residuals for something. That's god awful. That should not. The unions need to be stronger than what they currently are, and they need to actually go back and say, actually, the current deals that we have for residuals and for all these other things need to be rewritten because when these things were written, they were not written to include the internet. And when the writer's strike was what that was about. It was about streaming services and a lot of other things. And they said to them, okay, well, in these uncertain times, we will say you can have, I think it was 3 months where you weren't paying residuals. And we need to go back and change that now because the landscape of how we consume media is completely different. These things need to be updated periodically, not just set in stone for God knows how long. And it is annoying. It's really annoying to watch things suffer because they're just not willing to put money. I mean, these corporations have the most money they've ever had, and they're just not willing to put it into product quality or preservation or any of the things that make things important.
I think that's the thing that concerns me the most about the push to make so-called AI create art and other things like that. Because I think
I'm so angry about a lot of that right now.
It's such a danger. I mean, like when, if you asked someone 30, 40, 50 years ago, if there was AI, like, people who were like sci-fi fans are like, what could AI do? AI could solve so much of the world's, like, more on the manufacturing side, more on the actual job side,
production,
doing all that shit. What we don't want is a reverse of that. We wanted to free up people's jobs so people could have more time doing what they love and creating things. What is now happening, and why I'm so against AI for voice acting. I noticed that I think it was either Google or Microsoft released a AI voice which you can feed it prompts and it will read out sentences in the same cadence as the prompt. So you could basically have a fake audiobook or a fake line in a TV show or a fake, like voice in a video game character. And all of that could be auto-generated by an AI or machine learning.
I've seen... So there's copies of Hunger Pangs audiobooks out there that I did not make. And they've used AI software to make them. And I have no recourse against them because they're being hosted in places like Russia. So I spent $2,000 to $4,000, maybe, minimum, on audiobook stuff. I received 20% of my royalties because audiobooks are a scam. Brandon Sanderson's actually talking about that at the minute. He's refusing to use Audible. But a lot of other audiobook distributors are not much better. A lot of them, the maximum I get is 30% of my income. I still have not earned back what I spent on production. And then some wonderful, wonderful, god-awful person created AI audiobooks of my stuff and uploaded it to a server that I cannot get them taken down off.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely galling. You can tell I'm upset. And it's being told, well, it's not, it's whatever. And I'm going, right, well, what I did employed 3 people. I employed the voice actor, I employed the voice actor's assistant, and it gave an illustrator more work as well. It gave a formatter more work as well. When I make books the way I do them, I technically employ about 6 to 7 people to get it done. And there's people out there are going, oh, well, AI can do all of that. It's doing it with theft.
Yeah.
And the fact that Tor, the biggest fantasy sci-fi publisher of our day and age, Tor is using AI artwork for their covers.
Yeah.
I am fucking furious. I am so angry. But 90% of the time I just have to think about it. And my blood pressure goes up and I have to go lie down because I have atomic nervous system dysfunction and that destroys me. But it's at the point where I'm literally, I check my email, I get told there's been another AI upload of my thing, and I just give up because I can't do anything against it. I don't have the money for it to have a legal action against it.
Yeah.
But it's really quite disheartening how mainstream media is embracing theft for creation, whereas they were the biggest people that went after piracy. People just trying to watch things. I mean, I understand, as someone who makes my living from creation, it's not nice when people pirate your things. But a lot of the time, people are pirating things off streaming sites because it's being taken away from them because you're deciding to cancel things. And when you cancel it, you're taking it offline.
Yeah, half of the reason why people pirate stuff is preservation. Like, it's Nintendo. It's like the emulation side of things. It's all that. It's like, it's the only way to preserve this art is by...
A lot of it's preservation.
Yeah.
And you for years, you had, all this stuff about copyright. God forbid in fandom, if you got caught by someone like Anne Rice, her publisher would go after you. Star Wars, I'm old enough to remember people getting legal action letters from Lucasfilm because they were writing Star Wars stuff, they were making Star Wars art. And then you have the same industry now turning around and using AI. And the AI is using stolen artwork.
Yeah.
I am furious. My blood boils every time I think about it. I'm going, you absolute fuckers. For years, you harassed the fandom communities that kept your stuff alive.
Yeah.
You went after your fans, the reason you have jobs, and now you're pulling stuff from AI that is just going. You're typing stuff in. The AI is pulling things from independent artists and creators, and then you're going, great, a book cover, and book cover, designers are already underpaid.
Yeah.
And there's so.
And I hate to say it, all AI art looks shit. There's always some uncanny valley crap. I have not seen a single good bit of like solid AI art yet. I've seen
looks fake.
I've seen concepts.
Uncanny valley.
Yeah, I've seen concepts, but it's like, as Mothman saying in chat, always look at the fingers. That AI cannot do hands. It's
the
terrible.
law of the fairy. Check the shadows, check the teeth, check the fingers, because it doesn't look real.
Yeah.
It looks like those. There was a time period. It was the oil painting romance covers, which I still love. I love those so much. I prefer them over a lot of the modern stuff we have now. And you'd be like, why does that person have 3 hands? And it was literally just because they were copy pasting stuff together to make the thing, because they didn't want to pay artists. They've been doing it for a long time. They did not want to pay the artists who do the thing, so they pay for an image and then they copy and they splice it. And the AI is doing the exact same. It's shitty, it's low production, doesn't look good. There's some of them that I've got. There's a couple of stained glass ones that I've gone, oh, that's quite pretty, and then I realise it's AI, and I go, I wonder where the original artist is, because I bet theirs is better.
Yeah, exactly.
And it drives me insane. It really does drive me insane.
I think that's the thing that always annoys me about the people who, like, you now have people who are calling themselves, like, AI art engineers and shit like that. And it's, like, people who are able to put in the right prompt. And what you end up finding is that the prompt is actually, see that person's artwork.
Yeah.
Make it look like that. It's a fucking joke. But anyway, I suppose we could maybe move on to our second topic of conversation, which is it's not stealing art.
It's steam come out of my ears.
It's yeah. Go on, tell us about Susan Meachen, Joy.
It has been 0 days since there's been drama in Romancelandia. I need a sign behind me that I can just periodically wipe off, but there's no point because it will just say 0 days since there's been drama. Susan Meachen, sorry. Don't know why I said Sarah there. Sarah's a different one. But Susan Meachen is a indie romance author who 2 years ago died by suicide. It caused a ripple through the industry because it was alleged that she was bullied to death by fellow indie authors. It caused a huge, anti-bullying surge within the community. Fingers were pointed. People were run off platforms. It was a very awful time for everyone. Except, surprise, she's not dead. She faked the whole thing. She faked her own suicide, and she just came back with a post that was basically, it ended with, let the fun begin. And she's just starting off her career as if she didn't pretend to be dead for 2 years. But it's worse than that. She didn't just go offline for 2 years. She's been online this whole time under the name of TK Steele, manning her own fan page, gaslighting people by pretending to be a friend, and people that thought she was dead, she was talking to them as this other person.
Oh, fuck.
And then it also turns out she's been on TikTok this whole time under the name Susan Meachen. And do you want to know the really fascinating thing? It's her real fucking name. She's committed multiple acts of cybercrime and fraud under her real name, and she's wondering why people are upset with her.
So, to give everyone a bit of background, Joy sent me the article about this at like 1 o'clock in the morning and was like, hiya, we're gonna have a chat. Eno Lyle in chat is saying, did you read the interview with her? Oh, yes. Yes, we did. And
this week, it's diabolical.
It's nuts. Like, it's... I mean, I think it was Banner Kialak, or I think it was someone in chat mentioned it's like, it's one thing to fake your own death. It's another thing to fake your own suicide and then try and
get money from it. Because that's the other thing. She got money from it. There was GoFundMe's.
For her funeral.
For her funeral. The indie romance community gave money towards a funeral.
Yeah,
and editors also gave their time to edit one of her final books. And if you're not aware, when I was talking about the cost production for things, editing books can be anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars. People gave that time for free as a gift to the family so that her final book could be published.
And of course, the final book was supposed to be published as a gift
to her
daughter before her wedding,
who may not exist.
Her daughter doesn't exist. What?
Her daughter may or may not. We don't have proof that there is a daughter.
Oh, come on! What the fuck? Come on!
People are wondering if it's her or if it's somebody else. Because again, the daughter was having full-on conversations for 2 years on her Facebook page, talking to people as if her mother was dead.
That's why in the interview she was telling people to take it up with her daughter, because the daughter doesn't fucking exist.
Yeah, that's what I think.
No! Come on!
She's got multiple author accounts that she's been using to talk to people within the community. She's been in her own fandom talking to people about how much she misses Susan. She's been pushing sales, getting other authors to push sales so that the family has an income. She claims that she's earned no money. She's claimed that she never saw any money from the GoFundMe and to take it up with her daughter. She's claimed that there were no donation drives. There was an entire anthology called The Bully King, which was supposed to be an anti-bullying
and
thing,
it was dedicated to her, wasn't it?
It was dedicated to her. It was dedicated in her memory, and the money raised was given to the family.
This is legal action waiting to happen, and I am here for it.
It is multiple counts of fraud. It is multiple counts of fraud, and because people gave work under false pretenses, sales were given under false pretenses. People did a whole lot of labor for free. She took money from a GoFundMe. She continued to earn revenue under a supposedly dead name from Amazon, and just decided to... The thing is, she would have got away with it. It would have been a successful grift if she'd been smart enough to stay dead. There was no reason she had to resurrect Susan Meachen. She could have stayed under her other author names and earned money.
Well, that was the thing, wasn't it? Because in the interview, there's this really weird dynamic when the interviewer asks her about, like, why did you decide to like come back out of the from death, and she starts talking about, it's like, what would people I left because I was being bullied.
By who?
Well, this is the thing. She goes, I left because I was being bullied, and now I have come back after faking my suicide and being away for 2 years. I've now come back, and people are bullying me again. Would they prefer I stayed dead? Are they wishing death on me? And she asked the question as if she's not completely insane. That's nuts.
But she also, when she asked, about the thing, she also said, "I did die. It was a spiritual death." Fuck you. Fuck you. There is nothing that I have no forgiveness in my heart. Like when this all first started happening, I went, "My God, she must be really mentally unwell. There must be something happening that she felt this was appropriate. I hope she gets the help she needs." When she turned around in that second, in the interview that she gave, and she said, "I did die. It was a spiritual death. The emotions were real." Fuck you. Go to hell.
Yeah, I mean...
It is absolutely not the same thing. As someone who's lost people to suicide, it is not the same thing.
The worst things about it is that she then said, "And this is all going to be in my next book."
She's using her research.
It was research that, like, so the woman in her next book will have died and then come back, or fake died.
And it's a romance somehow, not a crime thriller.
Write the word cock in there a couple of times, and you're pretty much good. We've discussed this. We're fine. But yeah,
it's also the fact that when she was asked about what are you going to do about the people that donated, she turned around and said to them, "It's their fault for donating. They should have known better."
Yeah. What?
She's so angry right now. Insane. And the thing is, I was aware of all this happening. She was friends with a a friend with a friend, so I was aware of all this happening. I don't read or write heterosexual romance very often, but she's in that clique of very popular heterosexual romance writers and readers. I knew about her death. I knew people were devastated by it. And then it was then turned around to be, people used it as an opportunity to point fingers and say, well, you're a bully, you caused her death. You did this to her. People were accused of things that they did not do. They were told, you bullied this woman to death, you as good as murdered her.
Yeah,
Something that we've never had proof that they did, because there's never been any proof, like no screenshots, no nothing of the whole event.
I mean, the interesting thing as well, and just looking at the article that had the interview on it, is that you talked about editors and obviously the amount of time, but book cover artists were also included in that.
Yes, there's screenshots.
Yeah, there's screenshots of them chatting about it, and it's like, yeah, keep all of your emails, because, they said it's interesting. So the row of comments here, all the money she screwed out of me and dozens of other authors and book covers we paid for and never gained. And goes, do you have paperwork for this? Because that's grounds for a lawsuit. I don't think I kept anything after her death, heavy quotation marks. Her family sent me a bunch of pieces of book covers that were useless and told me to go whistle and not such nice words, after public saying they would honour all pending covers, so please get in touch. So they just dialed back all of the that was existing.
And the thing that really annoys me, when she was alive, she was known for having a bit of a flounce every now and then. She was known for being she's not someone who does well with the internet. It is not good for her. You can tell that. She was known for having wee flounces and going, I'm going offline because I'm being bullied, and then she'll be back the next day. Whereas if you're actually dealing with that, you log off for your mental health, and you do come back if you feel better, or you just don't come back. But she was known for being helpful to newbies in the industry. She was known for, let me take you under my wing and show you how things are done, while stealing from these people.
Yeah. I mean,
she painted herself as a really nice person who struggled with mental health, and she probably does struggle with mental health, because these are not the actions of someone who is mentally well. But being mentally unwell is not an excuse for being an absolute dickhead.
Yeah.
And that's what she is. She is a horrible... she traumatized her community.
I mean, faking a fucking suicide is absolutely, again, as someone was saying, faking a death's one thing. Faking a fucking suicide, which carries with it a whole lot more, because there's going to be people around you and the community and her family, and well, not her family, and her friends who will have been like, is there anything I could have done more? There's so much more that could have been, done. I mean, reading the last two questions. So we've got, what would you say to those who feel they donated under a false pretense and might feel wronged? To those who donated, I would again stress this wasn't demanded of them. I'm sorry they feel wronged, but they chose to donate. It doesn't magically become a loan because they regret it now. And why do they? Because an author told a story. The only difference now versus before is I'm alive. They'd rather I be dead, then they'd be happy about donating. That's what it seems like they're saying. They're cruelly wishing death on me. Lastly, do you plan to continue writing moving forward? Yes, I plan to continue writing, and this will be the backdrop for my next book. I'm in a unique position of expertise to write about a romance about a woman bullied into death who returns for a fresh start at life and love. As always, I can't promise a happy ending, just an interesting journey. What is going on? What the fuck?
An author told a story, Hen. That is the thing you publish, not your life.
But it's also imagine if all authors had to have lived experience before they wrote about fucking anything. You just...
Oh yeah, no, I'm a vampire / werewolf / eldritch fae being. That's how I was able to write Hunger Pangs so well.
Someone clip that, we've got her!
Damn, you finally got me. No, it's just... But it gets me that she's saying, I told a story. You didn't. You told a lie. And you can argue that storytelling is telling fun lies, but you're not I'm not turning around and saying the events of Hunger Pangs are true. I'm not turning around and saying any of the stuff I'm doing is true or based on real life.
It is.
I take elements of real life and I turn them into fantasy. Yeah. I don't. It would be like me saying, "Oh yeah, like." And this is the thing that gets me. This is the thing that really, really gets me. I am someone who struggles very openly with my mental health. I cannot imagine faking something like that and saying, "Oh, it's a part of a story."
No chance.
It's not.
There's something. To be honest, right, and this is maybe just me thinking it, but I think it's one thing to like. It's one thing to do it when you're not a person of note, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's awful to do when you're not a person of note, because you're then thinking about, okay, so you're maybe people online don't know you, but your friends who you're saying you're now dead to is pretty fucking weird, and
there was a lot of people that she had conversations with as her daughter.
Yeah.
And it was talking, they'd say things like, "I'm so sorry for your loss, I loved your mother." And she'd be responding as her daughter with, "My mother loved you too. I still listen to her voice some nights." It's just sick. Even if her daughter's a real person, that is sick.
I can't believe we're talking about. It's like, okay, so there's the line that she's not dead anymore, and then she's also got a fake daughter potentially that she's.
We don't know.
We don't know. We don't know.
She says.
But yeah, I think it's kind of dangerous, but I think there's definitely like a big fraud case, like in the future.
Multiple fraud cases. Like, she's committed cybercrime multiple times as well.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I genuinely hope people are actually considering legal action, because
the thing is, the FBI can get involved because of the level of fraud and cybercrime that's been committed. She's been impersonating people. She's been gaslighting and manipulating an entire community for 2 years.
Well, I think, like, I suppose, like, I think the FBI will need to get involved, but I also think that there needs to be one thing that I suppose the crime could be is if she specifically used GoFundMe for that, like, that gets a platform involved with, like, facilitating the fraud, so that, like, that'll be the angle of a lawsuit, as opposed to, like, I don't know if... I mean, the problem is, again, though, is, like, from a contractual perspective, I don't know how much that factors in, but, like, someone donating money or someone donating hours of work under the pretense that someone's dead, I'm just wondering what the...
It's labour under false pretenses, and those people involved can sue.
Even if they don't have a contract for it?
Well, the thing is, a lot of them would have had contracts.
Right, because, of course, the cover artists that weren't honoured. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because even if it wasn't honoured, the thing is, this is what I have writing contracts that go from when I was editing. I have contracts that go as far back as 2009.
Yeah.
I don't have ones after that because my NDAs have run out for those, but I have all my stuff that are still under NDA. I have my stuff that's still within legal action, on the off chance that someone turns around and says, "Oh, actually, this was not done," and like, I keep my things. So this is the thing: if you are a contractor, keep your shit. Make contracts. I will if you don't know how to make contracts, I will help you, because they are such a vital thing to making sure you do not get shafted the way some of these people are. But a lot of these things were. It was still labour under false pretenses, and even verbal agreement can count in this. If they've managed to keep screenshots of the conversations where they agreed to do the free labour to the daughter, that could be used against them as well as a verbal contract.
Yeah, but again, I don't really know how this story is going to proceed from that until there is a lawsuit. I mean, like, is Susan Meachen really just going to be, like, casually posting online? Like,
she's been casually posting this whole time on TikTok as Susan Meachen.
No, I know that, but, like, I'm talking about the reanimation that she's gone through.
Yeah, she's on Twitter. She's on Twitter promoting her books. She's just there. She's just there saying, "Oh, buy my book."
But surely that's just filled with people going,
People are buying it. So this is the thing. Sorry, I need to stop fidgeting with this pen because I'm angry. People are buying her stuff because they think it's going to be unhinged and wild because, she must be so creative.
No, don't hate purchase. No, you can't.
But they're not even hate purchasing. They think it must be good because she's plotted her whole desk. She came up with this fantastic... They're framing it as like a girl boss type thing, and I just want to throttle them. But some people were buying it expecting it to be really unhinged and good because she writes dark romances. So they're thinking it'll be really, really good and dark and awful, and but it's not. As somebody who has read her work, one of the comments I left on my blog post about it was, I never left a review because I didn't want to be mean.
Yeah.
She's not... It's fairly forgettable, run-of-the-mill, $3.99 Kindle romances. You know what you're paying for when you do that. It's nothing too memorable. But her sales have skyrocketed, probably more than what she was getting when she was alive the first time. And it's because she's piggybacking on the scandal. And it's not even people hate buying, it's them thinking it must be good because she was able to create this whole thing. It's people thinking she's a girl boss who's gaming the system. And it's like, she's not a girl boss, she's just unhinged. She's got the gaslighting part of that whole girl boss gatekeep gaslight thing, but she's not a girl boss. She's just mediocre.
It's just
so.
It's just like I don't understand it, man. It's
unhinged. It's one of the Romancelandia is known for its drama. This is an interesting question. People are like, why is there always drama in Romancelandia? Because we're huge. People think, they think, science fiction and fantasy are the pillars that hold up publishing. They're not. Romances. Indie romance is a huge, huge part of the industry that pays for a lot of other stuff to exist. And the reason there's so much drama is because there are so many of us compared to other genres. And unfortunately, that means there's a lot of unhinged people doing bad things. This is probably one of the worst. This is probably one of the worst things I've seen. When did I start editing? 2008. This is probably the worst thing I've seen since 2008 when I got into the industry. And it's I don't really know how she's gonna continue to do. Like, I don't think she's gonna get what she thinks she's thinking she's gonna be successful and people are gonna buy all of her stuff. I think people will buy them, and then I think there's going to be a lot of returns because it's not memorable. It's not even worth the $3.99 a lot of her stuff was charged at. And I'm someone who charges my work at $4.99, so I'm aware of, the cost of Kindle things. But I do not understand her thought process behind this is going to cause drama and the drama will give me clicks. Okay, well, you have your 15 seconds of fame, then what are you going to do?
I was like, well, you've got your clicks. What do you fancy? Could she go to jail? I mean, I imagine that'll be down to what crimes. I mean, cybercrime, fraud, any sort of thing like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if she's told to pay everything back.
I mean, she probably will be.
It depends.
She'll be paying damages for a long time. If legal action happens, she'll be paying damages if there's any justice in the world.
And remember, there's a criminal there's a criminal aspect to it, but there's also a not civilian aspect. Is there no? It's not. That's not it. What's it fucking called? When it's not a criminal case. It's not a civilian.
Civil.
That's it. Civil case. I mean, I'm
not sure. Both of us just blank.
Yeah.
You can see the brains.
Sorry, my mind's just been fucked by someone faking their suicide. So I'm just like, oof. What again though? Like, very excited to see how that drama will unfold. You'll probably get like
periodic updates as this unfolds throughout the year. Or she may fake her death again.
Oh fuck. No. Oh no, that would be the worst, wouldn't it? It'd be like the stress of the situation of like being found out and like,
Yeah.
And then
a lot of us felt bad.
Fuck.
A lot of us felt bad when she used to flounce back in the day. And a lot of us felt bad because we never took the flouncing seriously, and then she supposedly killed herself. There was a lot of people who felt very bad about that. Turns out we didn't need to. Turns out we were actually right when she was just being dramatic, and because you feel like a terrible person for not taking people seriously when they're obviously showing distress for things. But there was always something that was a wee bit kind of, she's high strung, she's drama, and she's trying to get. It's somebody that's she'd slam the door, the metaphorical door, and then she'd peer around to see who was looking. That was that was what a lot of us thought was happening. And then when she actually supposedly killed herself, there was a lot of people going, shit, we were really mean about her. Turns out we weren't.
Yeah.
I was not close enough to her to have any of that kind of feeling, but I knew a lot of people that were. Literally the night the story broke, my group Discord, it was like fucking 4th of July, every single bing bing, everything was going off, everything was lighting up with people going, oh my god, have you heard?
4th of July is maybe the wrong term to use as someone's fake suicide.
I know, but it was
celebrating.
Just like, yeah. I mean, some people might have been, but it was also, it wasn't even, it was when we were all like, have you heard that she's come back from the dead? That was when everything was kicking off. Everything went completely insane with like, what do you mean she faked it? Like literally, I went to go to the bathroom and I came back to 140 unread Discord messages in the 5 minutes I was gone. And I was like, oh, something's happening.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, that saga will continue to unfold. I dare say we'll be able to give you weekly updates about it. Like everyone who's listening. Right, so I'm guessing that kind of concludes our first episode. We've spoken a hell of a lot about The Witcher. We had a slight tangent about cocks and then accents. And we then talked about fake suicide and the romantic writing world imploding.
Again, welcome to 2020. 2023? Yes.
We're 2023 now. I've made that mistake like 3 or 4 times. Like already.
I said I was writing something this morning and I wrote 2024. I'm already in the future. My brain's gone.
You're just too advanced. It's those new glasses. That's where your mind's at now.
I'm seeing the future now. That's what's happening.
Right, but thank you to everyone who is is listening on the podcast. One thing that we always do at the end of our episodes is we wrap up for the people who are listening on podcast, and then we hang around in chat on Twitch for a wee bit longer. So if you're in Twitch chat, don't go anywhere. We'll be here for a wee conversation afterwards. But thanks very much to all of you who are listening on your podcasting platform of choice. This has been episode 1 of season 2 of the iSphere. Look at us go.
We're back.
Joy. We're back. And we're never stopping. We will see y'all next time, folks. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.